an unexpected and deeply moving moment, Hollywood icon Denzel Washington was seen in tears during a live TV appearance after receiving a surprise phone call from Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré. What was said during that call left both the live audience and viewers across the globe completely stunned. This remarkable exchange showed that true leadership and mutual respect can go beyond borders, cultures, and even fame. It started as a typical late-night talk show. The crowd erupted in cheers as Denzel Washington walked onto the stage, calm, smiling, legendary. The host greeted him with enthusiasm, making jokes and showing clips from his latest film. But behind Denzel's warm smile, there was a quiet intensity in his eyes, as if his thoughts were elsewhere. Midway through the show, the host grinned and said, "We've got a little surprise for you tonight, Denzel. A live call from someone far away." Denzel looked surprised. "What kind of surprise?" he asked. Suddenly, the screen behind him lit up with the image of a flag, Burkina Faso's. A wave of confusion swept the audience. Then a voice came through, clear, respectful, and calm. "Good evening, Mr. Washington. This is Ibrahim Traoré, President of the transition of Burkina Faso." Denzel froze. The entire room fell silent. For the first time in the show's history, there was complete stillness. Only one man's breath could be heard. No one had the slightest idea what would happen next. The audience watched in silence. Denzel's hands began to shake as the president continued. His English carried a French accent, gentle but deeply sincere. "You don't know me, Mr. Washington, but when I was 14, I was just a barefoot boy in Burkina Faso. I saw you in glory. I saw a black man, strong, not begging, not afraid, fighting for justice." Denzel blinked rapidly. "That night, I told my mother, one day, I'll fight for people too, just like him." The host looked speechless. Denzel covered his mouth with his hand. Ibrahim went on. "Years later, when my people needed someone to stand up, I remembered your strength, your voice, your eyes. I stood, not because I was fearless, but because I had seen what bravery looked like in you." Silence filled the room. Slowly, Denzel lowered his hand, his eyes red with emotion. "You're telling me I helped shape a president?" "No, sir," Ibrahim replied. "You helped shape a man who refused to kneel before injustice." A single tear rolled down Denzel's cheek. "Thank you, my brother." The crowd let out a quiet gasp. But the next words from the president were even more surprising. Denzel leaned in, eyes locked on the screen. The host sat frozen. Ibrahim continued, "Today, I speak not only as a president, but as a man who owes a debt. And in Burkina Faso, when someone saves your soul, we never forget." Denzel shook his head, humbled. "No, please, I didn't. Mr. Washington," Traoré said, "I am officially inviting you to be." He was honored in Ouagadougou, but more than that, the president said, "I want to name a leadership school after you. A place where our children can learn to stand proud, just as I learned by watching you." The crowd gasped once more. The host quietly whispered, "Wow." Denzel's voice trembled. "Mr. President, I don't deserve that." Traoré smiled kindly. "That's exactly why you do." The screen faded to black as the call ended. And there, broadcast to millions on national television, Denzel Washington lowered his head into his hands and wept. Not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming realization that a single life really can leave ripples across oceans and generations. But this was only the beginning. Within a day, Denzel was getting ready to travel. Burkina Faso was calling, and what awaited him would shake the world. He didn't sleep that night. He kept hearing Ibrahim Traoré's words echoing in his mind. His eyes were still red long after the cameras had turned off. By morning, social media had erupted. Denzel and Traoré was trending in more than 20 countries. Fans, reporters, even world leaders were reacting to the emotional exchange, many calling it one of the most powerful moments on TV in recent history. But while the world buzzed, Denzel was quietly packing, not for a film, but for something that felt much deeper, almost sacred. He booked the earliest flight to Burkina Faso, no entourage, no spotlight, just him, a small backpack, and a heart full of emotions he couldn't quite explain. As the plane ascended, he stared out the window and whispered, "I don't know what I'm stepping into, but I know I need to go." Back in Ouagadougou, President Traoré stood silently by a palace window, watching the runway far off in the distance. An aide asked, "Should we alert the media?" Traoré shook his head. No cameras, no speeches, just truth. Something profound was about to take place. Neither of them knew that in less than 2 days they would both cry again, this time side by side. When Denzel's plane landed, there were no reporters. No red carpets, just stillness. A black SUV waited quietly on the tarmac. Next to it stood a single man, dressed modestly. No medals, no show. It was President Ibrahim Traoré. Denzel stepped out slowly, their eyes locked. No words were spoken. They embraced, not as an actor and a president, but as two men brought together by fate. "I'm honored you came," said Ibrahim. Denzel gave a faint smile. "I didn't come as a celebrity. I came as a brother." The SUV drove through dusty streets, passing markets and barefoot children who waved as it went by. No one knew who was inside. They stopped at a simple home, built from sun-baked clay and tin. "This was my house," Traoré said quietly. He opened the door. Inside there were no guards, no luxury, just faded photos, a worn mat on the floor, and silence. Then Traoré handed Denzel a creased photograph. In it, a young boy held the hand of an older woman. "She raised me," he said. "My parents worked all the time. She fed me, bathed me, told me stories of strength." Then, almost in a whisper, he added, "And she's still alive." They drove on for another hour, winding through quiet village roads. Neither man said much. Denzel just held the picture, gazing at the woman's wide smile and gentle eyes, and a strength that only time could forge. "Where is she now?" Denzel asked. Traoré's jaw tightened. "She still works, cleaning classrooms in a rural school." Denzel turned slowly. At 85, the president nodded. "She never asked for anything. She used to say, 'God gave me legs, I'll use them until He takes them.'" When they arrived, the school looked weathered but vibrant. Children ran barefoot, drawing in the dirt with sticks. Then she appeared, bent with age but proud, broom in hand. The same woman from the photograph. Denzel stepped out of the car, momentarily. Frozen. Traoré walked toward her. She looked up and her eyes welled with tears. "Ibrahim," she whispered. He rushed into her embrace. "Mahawa," he said, voice cracking. They wept. Then Denzel approached. She turned to him, gasped, and her hands began to tremble. You're him," she said, gently touching his face. In a quiet school courtyard in Burkina Faso, time stood still. 3 lives, 3 paths, united in one powerful moment. But what came next would touch not just hearts, but an entire nation. Mahawa sat between Denzel and President Traoré beneath the shade of a broad baobab tree near the school. Her hands were calloused, her back slightly hunched, but her voice still carried warmth. She shared stories of young Ibrahim, how he'd cry in her arms on cold nights, and how he once gave her his only slice of mango so she wouldn't go hungry. Denzel listened, his eyes softer than the world usually saw. Then she reached into the pocket of her worn apron. "I've kept this all these years," she said. She unfolded a yellowed piece of paper with a child's handwriting. "One day I will be a leader and I will find you, Mama. I promise." Traoré inhaled sharply. He remembered writing it on her birthday at age 9, after she gave him her only piece of bread. Denzel wiped a tear from his cheek. She never gave up hope. That's the strongest kind of faith. Just then, a young student ran up barefoot, laughing, holding a cracked plastic ball. "Mama, will you play?" And she did, still barefoot, still smiling. Something inside Denzel shifted. He was no longer just a guest. He had found something deeply meaningful. That evening, Denzel and Traoré returned to the palace. The mood had changed. They didn't speak much, both men lost in thought. Then Traoré stood. "I want to show you something I've never shown anyone outside my family." He led Denzel down a private corridor, stone walls, quiet steps, no guards. At the end was a heavy wooden door. He unlocked it. Inside was a small, dimly lit room filled with old books, maps, journals, and a large framed photo. Mahawa and a boy, young Ibrahim, both laughing. "This is my real treasure room," Traoré said. Denzel stood speechless. Traoré picked up an old notebook. Inside were handwritten entries, his early dreams for Burkina Faso. All of this started with her. "I'm here because she believed I was worth something, even when I had nothing." Denzel gently touched the pages. "You lead like a son who remembers love." Traoré nodded. "And I want the world to understand. True leadership isn't about power. It's about gratitude." The room fell silent. Two great men, united by one goal, to honor the woman who had helped shape a president. And Denzel had an idea, one that would surprise everyone, especially Mahawa. At dawn, Denzel sat on the palace terrace, watching the sunrise over Ouagadougou. He couldn't stop thinking about Mama, her laughter, her resilience. Then Ibrahim joined him. "I had a thought," Denzel said, sipping tea. "Let's give her the honor she never asked for." Traoré smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." That afternoon, without media or fanfare, they returned to the village school with a small team. Children gathered, teachers stood in silence. Mahawa looked puzzled. "What's happening?" Then Traoré knelt before her, holding a small velvet box. Inside was a gold medallion engraved with her name and the national seal. "For your service to this nation, as a mother, a teacher, and a guardian of hope," he said, voice trembling. Children clapped. Denzel stepped forward, tears in his eyes, and, "From the world of cinema," he said, holding up an envelope. "I spoke with my producer this morning. Your story is becoming a film. Every cent will go toward building schools in your name." Mahawa dropped to her knees, overwhelmed. She had given so much, and now she was receiving. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. 3 days later, Denzel Washington returned to Los Angeles for a live TV interview on a major talk show. The tone was light. Red carpets, new roles, a bit of laughter. But behind Denzel's smile, something had changed. As the cameras rolled and the host asked about his trip to Africa, Denzel paused. "Can I take a call?" he asked. The host chuckled, surprised. "Live?" Denzel nodded. The crew scrambled, and moments later the screen behind him lit up. President Ibrahim Traoré appeared live from Burkina Faso. The studio went quiet. "Mr. Washington," Traoré said warmly, "your visit reminded us that kindness knows no borders." Then he added, "And today, I'd like to honor someone you inspired." He gestured beside him, and Mahawa appeared on screen, holding a phone, her eyes glistening. The audience gasped. Denzel's lips trembled. His hand shook. "You reminded the world," Traoré said, "that even those with the loudest voices must sometimes pause to listen. Listen." Then, in gentle, broken English, Mahawa whispered, "Thank you, my son." Denzel bowed his head and cried, on live TV. And so did millions watching across the world. Within minutes, the clip had gone viral. This moment wasn't about movies anymore. It touched something much deeper. Twitter lit up. Mahawa, President of Hearts. Denzel speaks out. From Paris to Johannesburg, Tokyo to Atlanta, people began sharing stories of the women who raised them, shaped them. An old photo of Traoré hugging Mahawa in her kitchen became a powerful symbol. Major news outlets paused their regular coverage to replay the moment. Denzel's tears, Traoré's soft words. Mahawa saying, "Thank you." CNN called it the most human moment ever captured live on television. But something even more unexpected happened. Donations started pouring in. A modest GoFundMe, quietly set up by a student from the village school, had hoped to raise $10,000. Within 2 hours had passed. 1 million people didn't just watch, they felt something. And they acted. In a world that often feels divided, this story, of a soldier's vow, a mother's love, and an actor's emotion, was bringing strangers together. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Mama Hawa was growing weaker. She had one final wish. By the 6th day of this unforgettable week, her body was tired. She had smiled for days, embraced countless people, and spoken with presidents and celebrities. But her strength was fading. She asked to see Denzel and Ibrahim, alone. No cameras, no reporters, just 3 people in a quiet village room. "I'm old," she said gently, her voice faint but calm. "I won't see the next planting season." Both men shook their heads, pleading with her to hold on, to rest. But she smiled softly. "I'm not afraid. My only wish is that no child in Burkina Faso ever goes to school hungry." A single tear rolled down Traoré's face. She reached for Denzel's hand. "You tell stories that matter," she said. "The world listens to you. Tell this one." Then, from beneath her pillow, she pulled out a worn scarf, torn but carefully mended. It was the same one young Ibrahim used to wrap around her arm when he played president. She placed it in Traoré's hand. "My first medal," she whispered. Then her final words, "Take care of each other." They held her as she closed her eyes. Outside, the sun was rising, and so was her legacy. President Ibrahim Traoré stood silently beside her bed, the scarf still in his hand. The room smelled of shea butter and old books. Denzel knelt by her feet, head bowed, shoulders shaking. Then, softly, Traoré spoke. "She gave me everything when I had nothing. Now I must give everything back." He turned to Denzel, holding the scarf like a royal banner. "We will build something in her name. A school, a garden, a future." Denzel looked up, eyes red. "Yes," he said. "Yes, we will. I'll help." Outside, people had gathered. Somehow they knew. Traoré stepped out, holding the scarf high. "Mama has gone to rest," he said, "but her spirit will nourish generations." The crowd wept. In under 12 hours, the story had spread across the globe. Burkina Faso declared a national day of mourning for Mahawa. That night, during a press conference, Traoré made one more promise. Every child in Burkina Faso will one day know her name. As for Denzel, he quietly canceled all upcoming commitments. "I've portrayed kings and generals," he said, "but today, I serve a mother." The following morning, the sun rose softly over Burkina Faso. In the center of the village square rested a simple wooden casket. There were no gold-plated trophies, no red carpets, just flowers, the steady rhythm of drums, and silence. President Traoré walked behind the casket alone, holding only a scarf. Denzel followed, his suit rumpled from sleep, his eyes swollen with emotion. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Messages poured in from world leaders. But what moved people most was a barefoot boy from Niger who had walked for 2 days to deliver a handwritten note. "Thank you for raising our president." As the casket was lowered into the ground, the village began to sing. Children cried, elders clutched their hearts, and a bird landed softly on the grave, refusing to fly away. Then, something unexpected happened. Denzel stepped forward, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a necklace. It had belonged to his father. He whispered, "She reminded me of him, strong, quiet, never asked for anything." He placed the necklace gently on the grave and said, "Goodbye, Mama." Even the EUI cameras stopped rolling. Some moments are too sacred to capture. That night, President Ibrahim Traoré and Denzel Washington sat under the stars on a straw mat. Neither said a word. A small fire crackled between them. No speeches were needed. They had just buried the woman who had shaped them both. One through touch, the other through presence. Then Traoré broke the silence. "Denzel, this week I remembered who I am." Denzel nodded. "Me too." In the stillness, they made a pact, not on paper, but sealed with pain, gratitude, and purpose. Within hours, they launched plans for the Mahawa Foundation, a joint effort to bring food, education, and emotional support to children in rural Burkina Faso and beyond. Denzel pledged his entire salary from his next film to support it, but what resonated most wasn't the money. It was a short video Denzel posted just before returning home. Speaking directly into the camera, he said, "If one woman in a small village can raise a future president and change the heart of a Hollywood actor, then what are we waiting for?" That video reached 100 million views in a single day. The world paused, waiting to see what would follow. 3 days after the funeral, Denzel returned to the US quietly. No press, no attention. But the producers of a long-scheduled live interview insisted he still appear. The program had been heavily promoted. Denzel agreed, but on one condition: let me speak from the heart. No script. The set was bright and the audience was full of anticipation. Most expected light conversation, maybe a few laughs. But when the host asked, "Denzel, you've traveled the world. What moment changed your soul?" He didn't respond, at least not right away. He simply reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a scarf. Then, leaning toward the microphone, he whispered, "President Ibrahim Traoré called me, and I couldn't breathe. He reminded me that true greatness isn't in trophies. It's in mothers who heal your wounds, and presidents who remember them." The host, visibly puzzled, asked, "And what exactly did he say?" With tears welling in his eyes, Denzel slowly lifted his phone, played a voice memo, and let everyone in the room hear President Traoré's message. "Thank you for honoring a woman. The world forgot, but who raised a man, the world remembers." At that moment, Denzel broke down, in front of millions. The broadcast spread like wildfire. Dinner tables fell silent, newsrooms paused, social media froze. A clip of Denzel crying, holding that scarf and playing the president's voice, became the most shared video of the year. Comments flooded in. "I've never cried this much over a stranger's love. This made me want to call my mom right now." Who is Ibrahim Traoré? The world needs more leaders like him. Across Africa, stories of forgotten mothers began to surface. In the US, youth groups organized candlelight vigils in memory of Mahawa. But in Burkina Faso, something even more touching happened. Children across villages began writing letters, not to Santa, not to stars, but to President Traoré. One letter read, "If I work hard like you, will I also make my mother proud?" As for Denzel, he stayed quiet after the interview, until the next morning when he posted a photo on Instagram. A single tree in Burkina Faso. The caption read, "She watered roots that now hold up nations." No hashtags, no promotions, just truth. The world watched and wept. Exactly 1 week after that unexpected call, a statue was quietly revealed in Ouagadougou. It wasn't of a president, a general, or a king. It showed a woman holding a child's hand, the child wrapped in a familiar scarf. A bronze plaque underneath read, "To Mahawa, the mother of all leaders." President Ibrahim Traoré stood before it. Denzel Washington beside him, each holding a candle. Neither man said a word. Some moments are too sacred for speech. That night, a gentle breeze moved through the city. Villagers said they could feel Mahawa's spirit brushing softly against their cheeks. Back in Hollywood, Denzel made one final gesture. He announced a new scholarship, the Mahawa Fund, in partnership with the Burkina Faso government. It's dedicated to rural African girls with dreams of becoming leaders. When the press asked for a comment, Denzel simply said, "Some phone calls change your calendar. This one changed my soul." Dear viewers, if this story touched you, made you cry, made you reflect, or reminded you of someone you love, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below that says, "I believe in the power of love and leadership. Your voice matters." Let's help stories like this reach every corner of the world. Let's remind people that greatness isn't about fame, it's about heart. Share your thoughts. Send this video to someone who needs hope today, and always remember, one act of kindness can echo through generations. Thank you for watching.